Well, there's kind of a meltdown happening in Washington, a little bit of a power struggle between Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, and some of the freshman congresswomen, in particular, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And the reason I think it's actually healthy to talk about is that for among the first times ever, the Democrats are turning their endless accusation of racism on each other. You may have noticed, in fact, I've talked about many times on the show, the many substantive policy areas that America has to address in moving our country forward and in having Congress pass laws. The endless effort of the American left is to categorize anyone's opinion who will not agree with exactly what the left wants to call that person racist. And until very recently, until President Trump came on the scene, pretty much everybody in the right just backs down. They don't want that racist label hurled at them. They don't want that to hurt them in their re-election efforts, and they go back to their constituents, and they just back down. The racist label, falsely flung by the American left, has truly caused many policies to be put forward and passed because conservatives are afraid of being labeled racist. Well, now it's being turned on the Democrats. It's a little bit fun to watch, but it's also very instructional for America to recognize we have to be smarter in recognizing what is racism and what is a false accusation of racism. Apparently, during a closed-door caucus meeting, Nancy Pelosi, so she's got the Democrats elected to Congress in the meeting, she basically last week told them, we need to really be careful, Democratic caucus members, which include Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other of the first-year, very left-wing, very radical leftist members of Congress. We have to try to keep our disagreements internal. We need to not be advertising policy or any other disagreements among ourselves in our tweets and messaging. This did not go over very well with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has in particular been butting heads with Nancy Pelosi over a variety of issues. So last Wednesday, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in an interview with the Washington Post, said, "When these comments first started, I kind of thought that she," referring to Pelosi, was keeping the progressive flank at more of an arm's distance in order to protect more moderate members, which I understood. But the persistent singling out, it got to a point where it was just outright disrespectful. The explicit singling out of newly elected women of color." This is what the accusation that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, first-term member of Congress from upstate New York, from New York, a very left-wing radical, outright socialist, and just endless hurler of the racist accusation against anyone who won't agree with her on anything. She's now hurling that accusation at the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, against her own party. Of course, Nancy Pelosi didn't take that too well. Some other Democrats jumped to Pelosi's defense. The most hilarious jumping to Pelosi's defense happened when Donald Trump spoke up. The president, the Republican who disagrees with Nancy Pelosi in pretty much everything. But even President Trump said, "I'll tell you something about Nancy Pelosi that you know better than I do." He's speaking to the press. "She is not a racist, okay? She's not a racist. For them to call her a racist is a disgrace." So Trump sided with Pelosi against AOC, probably further making life difficult for Nancy Pelosi. But the other interesting thing about this was that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tried to do a comeback about this, and she tried to essentially say, even though I said she's picking on women of color, I didn't mean to say she's a racist. And she actually, Pelosi, used some expression like these stupidly, and I asked a friend if they could, it's just pointing out the pattern. It's worth asking why. But she ultimately said, it's absolutely not. Cortez is saying she's not calling Pelosi a racist. She had some tweet where she said stupidly ignorant or something like that, for anyone to conclude that because she said Pelosi is picking on women of color, that she was calling Pelosi a racist. I don't know. I think most people probably took it that way. But the other similar thing, the use of racism as an accusation to shut other people down in a political competition, happened in the Democrat debate last week. The 20 different presidential candidates in their debate, we had on one of the evenings, we had the Kamala Harris, the Democrat senator from California, running, and she's black, and she's running for president, and she was picking on Joe Biden, also on stage with her as one of the candidates for president. And she really attacked him, Biden, on his statements he made with respect to working with some other members of of the U.S. Senate years ago who were avowed open racists. Biden had said, hey, sometimes I work with them, didn't agree with everything, we got things done. And, whether you do or don't think that's okay, that was years ago. But Kamala Harris actually chose to leap on that in the presidential debate, and it actually appears to have hurt Biden in his how he's doing. All the polling showing people are backing off from him. In part, he was stung or hurt by Kamala Harris's implied argument that he was racist somehow. Just stop and think of the absurdity. This is a senior white Democrat, been in Congress for decades and the Senate, who agreed to and did serve as the vice president of the United States under the first black president ever elected. Biden did that, but Kamala Harris is going to call him a racist. And, I got to say, folks, the reason I want to hit this story, we're going to talk about several aspects of this, because obviously the whole racist argument came up again with respect to the series of tweets President Trump put out that relate to the statements by some radical leftist members of the Democrat Party who have just been more and more vociferously and in a very ugly manner critical of just America. Critical of America. And finally, Trump's tweets last week, or earlier this week, you likely saw, caused some people to step back aghast and say, my gosh, this is terrible, this is horrible. But to wrap up today's first five, this is a healthy discussion in America to recognize the obnoxious, profound overuse of the racist name-calling by the American left, hurling the term racist against anyone who disagrees with them on any policy whatsoever. I've done other shows, run through the number of policies where the left says our position is on whatever it is: border security, taxation policy, environmental policy, government assistance programs, on and on and on. The left manages to find some argument that if conservatives won't agree with them, that it's because of racism. This is a great discussion for America to have, to get real and honest and more accurate about the use of that term. Because the truth is, there is some racism in America. Not nearly the profound level of racism the leftists try to portray, but real racism does happen. Real racist actions do occur. When they occur, we need to examine them, understand the problem, and try to fix it. What the left has done is dumbed down our perception and understanding of what real racism is by their just grotesque overuse of the term every time they want to shut down political opposition. I am going to turn next in the show to be talking about what President Trump said in his tweet that has become so controversial, and to say it's really part of the great solution to re-identifying what it means to say racist, and when that term has been wrongly used, to criticize the people who overuse it and wrongly use it. And that, my friends, is today's first five.